Good morning, everyone. Your Memorial Day weather briefing for this May 28th finds that there is one significant change in the forecast, and that is that the remnants of Alberto do look to be bringing some good rains to the Illinois-Indiana border area for tomorrow night through Wednesday. Otherwise, I do not see any major changes in the forecast versus what I presented from back on Friday. Temperature rainfall outlooks this morning, still plenty of big-time heat in the near term, but you can still see that there is moderation in the forecast for the 11 to 15 day time frame. Precipitation forecast still disfavoring central portions of the Corn Belt with a lot of rainfall during the next 2 weeks, very similar to my outlook from back on Friday. QPF discussion this morning for the 1 to 5 day time frame. I will consider portions of this forecast both too dry and too wet. You can see that for western portions of Iowa, they are going for largely no rain at all in this 5 day time frame. I think that western Iowa has enough of a rainfall chance for Friday night that I would personally not be going for a no rainfall in that area for the 5 day time frame. Conversely, I think that the bigger rain shown in western portions of Kansas and into western portion of Nebraska, certainly the amounts there are going to be just as big as shown, with most of that rainfall during the next 24 hours. But as usual, I think that it is a situation where the model is overdoing the type of coverage that is going to be seen in that area. For the day 6 to 7 time frame, this map shown here would be a map that is heavily weighted towards the GFS forecast. I think that the European model has a better chance at verifying. The European model would have a wetter forecast for the especially central Corn Belt, but even the European model would not be going for big rains even at that time. I would be remiss this morning if I did not talk about the type of heat that has been seen across the nation's midsection for the past 3 days. Looking at high temperatures from back on Friday, you saw that 90-degree temperatures started to be a little bit more common at that time in the Corn Belt while continuing to be present in the southern plains. And then we really saw the big heat set in for the past 2 days. Look at the extensive area of 90-plus degree temperatures seen in the Corn Belt and Plain states, but of more note the 100-plus degree temperatures seen on Saturday in southeastern Nebraska, northeastern Kansas, northwestern Missouri, and portions of southwestern Iowa, and even additional 100-plus degree temperatures seen in the western Corn Belt yesterday. For a place like Omaha, they saw 2 consecutive days with high temperatures reaching the 100-degree mark. With regards to looking at those afternoon highs with respect to normal, note the extensive area of 20-plus degree above normal high temperatures for the last 2 days across big portions of the Corn Belt region. With regards to the temperature forecast for this Memorial Day, not quite as warm as the last 2 days, but still notice extensive 90-plus degree heats covering most of the Corn Belt for this Monday. Going to be some pockets of 95-plus degree heat as well. Likely not as extensive on 90-plus degree heat then for tomorrow through the remainder of the work week period, but 90-plus degree heat will never disappear entirely. And by the time we get to Friday, fairly extensive 90 to 95-plus degree heat is once again going to be seen at that time in the western Corn Belt, also the southwestern Corn Belt getting into the mid-south, and you can also see extensive 100 to 105 plus degree heat on Friday for a big portion of the southern plains. The temperature forecast for the weekend is a little bit up in the air right now. You can find models that would still say more 90 plus degree heat in the Corn Belt, especially in the south for the weekend period. I am opting for cooler model solutions at this time. European model for Saturday finds that 90 plus degree heat for Saturday would be pressed further southward into just extreme southern portion of the Corn Belt and areas to the south of there. So it's my own personal opinion that the bulk of the 90 plus degree heat in the Corn Belt is going to be seen for today through Friday. Still above normal temperatures, but not nearly as hot for the 6 to 10 day period in the Corn Belt, with 90 plus degree heat largely being absent for that time frame. And then as we get towards the 11 to 15 day period, similar to the maps of last week, showing that a trough of low pressure is going to be forming at that time in the eastern portions of the nation. Any ridging at that time shoved more towards western portions of the nation. So it is in the 11 to 15 day time frame where we are going to be making a better attempt at more moderation in temperatures. Still clearly not the coolest weather pattern that you've ever seen though, and you can still note that for the 11 to 15 day time frame, I still have above normal temperatures in the forecast for the southern plains and for the southwestern Corn Belt. With regards to precipitation, obviously in the near term, the big story is Tropical Storm Alberto, and there you can see its location as of 4 o'clock Central Time this morning and the track of the storm from the National Hurricane Center. When looking at the satellite photo from about 6:15 this morning, you can easily see Alberto, but you can also see that it's fairly ragged in nature. Not a whole lot of convection associated with Alberto at that time. So with the ragged nature of the storm and with the storm expected to make landfall this afternoon, it's likely running out of time to see further strengthening from where it is right now. As of 4 o'clock this morning, maximum sustained winds on Alberta were at 65 miles per hour. By the time we get to 7 o'clock in the afternoon tomorrow, you can see that the remnants of Alberta at that time located fairly close to the Kentucky-Tennessee border. It would be moving northward from there, so that's obviously the reason why we are looking at some nice rains right along the Illinois-Indiana border area for tomorrow night and into Wednesday. Probably rainfall amounts there on the order of 3/4 of an inch to an inch and a quarter, especially southern portion of the border area of Illinois and Indiana really benefiting from that rainfall when it does arrive. Otherwise, as I said, in the 2-week forecast, it's not an especially wet pattern for the Corn Belt. It's clearly not completely dry, but not a situation where we're looking at any sort of a big widespread soaking rainfall event at any portion of the 2-week forecast for the Corn Belt region. If you are looking for the next relatively significant rainfall system to track, I think that it would be for late in the day Friday, for Friday night and into the weekend. This is looking at surface features from the various models as of 1 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, and you can see from the European model in the upper right and from the GFS model, from the European ensemble, and also from the Canadian operational model to some degree that they are indicating a relatively decent system at that time in the western Corn Belt and into the northern plains. The rains from that system would then be working their way eastward on Saturday. It's clearly not a big rainfall event, maybe some half to 1 inch rains from that system in the far western, northwestern Corn Belt and into the northern plains, but probably less than that for the rest of the Corn Belt. So again, bottom line for the Corn Belt, not a completely dry forecast, but one that's clearly not overly wet either, with no big storms, no big soaking rainfall events in the 2-week forecast. So that's how I see things for the next 2 weeks, and you can see that a big area of the Corn Belt not going completely dry, but looking for modestly subnormal rainfall during the next 2 weeks. A lot of that area shaded, going to be seeing under an inch of rainfall in that period. Even drier conditions in the southern plains, most places under a ½ inch there, and the bulk of the rainfall in the southern plains coming during the next 24 hours with an outbreak of severe weather there. Rainfall chances then really go downhill for the southern plains for tomorrow through the end of the 2-week time frame. It is a fairly active weather pattern for especially the next 10 days for the northern plains. Some very nice rainfall amounts there for both the 1 to 5 and 6 to 10 day period. The bulk of the rainfall that is shown in southeastern portions of the nation coming from Alberta, even that area, looking at relatively a drier weather pattern once we get to the middle of this week and beyond. Internationally for this morning in Brazil, a weather pattern that is going to be featuring subnormal rainfall amounts in northern Brazil, while above normal rainfall totals for the next 2 weeks will be found in the south. You can see there on the map on the right that 2-week rainfall totals are going to be fairly significant for both Paraná and southern Mato Grosso do Sul. Note that most of that rainfall, though, is not going to be starting until Friday. Even that area is going to be dry from today through Thursday. Rains, though, on Friday, and some very nice rainfall amounts will then be seen at various times for the rest of the 2-week forecast for Paraná and Mato Grosso do Sul, while areas further northward are still locked into their dry season weather pattern. Over in Europe, a rainfall pattern for Europe, looking at above normal rainfall amounts for especially western portion of Europe, France and Spain in particular doing quite well on rainfall during the next 2 weeks. To the east of there for Eastern Europe, and in particular for the wintergrain and summer row crop areas of the former Soviet Union, a strictly below normal rainfall pattern there for the next 2 weeks. For the wintergrain areas of the former Soviet Union, completely dry weather there for today through Monday. Any rain that is going to be seen there coming during the second week of the 2-week forecast, and even then rainfall amounts may not be a lot more than 1/4 to 3/4 of an inch. For the spring grain areas of the former Soviet Union, for 3-day rainfall totals, note that a big portion of the spring grain area saw significant rainfall amounts, all of that rain of course unwanted in nature. Their forecast for the next 10 days staying relatively active. You can see the 10-day rainfall totals there on the left. The forecast for at least the next week remaining quite cold as well. Look at the temperature anomalies suspected in the spring grain areas for tomorrow morning. We will likely see several mornings this week with low temperatures in a big portion of the spring grain areas in the 30s. We'll probably see isolated spots getting to the 32-degree mark or a little bit lower than that. Over in China, rainfall is needed in Manchuria. Their forecast is not completely dry for the next 2 weeks, but clearly a situation where Manchuria and even the North China Plain for that matter, looking at subnormal rainfall amounts during the 2 week time frame. For the Canadian prairies, clearly an improving weather situation for the Canadian prairies. Look at the extensive rainfall that is expected there during the next 10 days from the European model. Most of the rainfall for the next 5 days occurring in eastern portions of Saskatchewan and especially Manitoba, before widespread rainfall is seen across the Canadian prairies for the 6 to 10 day time frame. They are also going to be seeing a cool down as well. Note that temperature anomalies across the Canadian prairies by Friday running well below normal. Finishing up things this morning in Australia, note that we did see a little bit of additional rainfall for some of the wheat areas of Australia in the west back on Friday. The forecast for the next 2 weeks in Australian wheat areas looks normal to slightly below normal, though note that the bulk of the rainfall that is shown there for the 2 week time frame is going to be falling in week 2 periods. That's what I have for this morning. Everyone have themselves a great Memorial Day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow morning.